am ready.
That is fine.
Are you guys ready? I have to make sure my co-host, my not co-host, but guests are ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's do this. Sorry, this was a little bit of a clusterfuck. Okay. Tom, just tell me when you started, and I can just...
Yeah, I've already started recording, so kick in your intro.
All right, so I'm going to have to edit out some of this. Great. Welcome to Meet the preshow here. I am your host, Danny Kukler, and I have 3 guests with me today to talk about the business of wrestling and the future of the wrestling industry. A little moderatum of what Meet the preshow is. It's basically a show talking about the issues, debating the business and ethics and whatnot of the pro wrestling industry. That's why we call this Meet the preshow. Get it? Meet the Press is a debate show on NBC, and preshow is a wrestling maneuver. So, there it is. I have 3 guests with me today, 3 esteemed guests in their own right. First off, the man that's recording this, and the man that is de facto co-host, and my buddy from the first episode of Meet the preshow, the pilot episode where we talked about Randy Orton. That is on the podcast feed there. Military Industrial Suplex host, Twitter at MIS Podcast, Tom Batista. How are you doing today, Tom?
I'm doing great, Dan. Thanks for having me.
My second guest is Brandon Howard of Voices of Wrestling and Fightful Wrestling, columnist, podcaster, and independent pro wrestler. Twitter at Brandon Thurston, or his wrestler Twitter is at Farmer Thurston. Did I get all that right, Brandon?
Farmer _ Thurston, but yeah. So if this is like Meet the Press, does that make you like Tim Russert or I don't know, whoever they have now?
Damn right it does. Chuck Todd.
There you go.
Damn right. And the third guest I have is a Twitter connoisseur, Twitter pundit, and writer for Cageside Seats. At Glasgow KJH, I wrote it wrong in the format, but I know that's Glasgow KJH, not JKH. It is Keith Harris of KJ Seats. How are you doing, Keith?
I'm doing well. I guess I'm your foreign correspondent then.
Maybe Brandon's the White House correspondent, and then you are like...
Downing Street correspondent.
Yes. Downing Street correspondent, indeed. So, here's a little overview of what we're talking about today. We're talking about, WWE business and the business of wrestling in general. So, some of the topics we'll go over is WWE versus everyone in terms of business. This is just an overview. A brief Q1 summary and analysis. We'll be relying heavily on Brandon for this one. Is New Japan a threat? How is FloSlam doing? Social media trends and looking towards the future and possibilities there. So, WWE versus everyone in terms of business. Where do we begin with this? Because it's such an interesting time because ROH just got a lot more viewership with the Sinclair purchase of Tribune. WWE is catering to India. Where do we begin on this such a broad topic? Anyone's allowed to comment.
Well, we just saw, just as we were recording this, someone just noticed and sort of brought to my attention that FloSlam raised the price on their month-to-month subscription. So if you don't know, you either pay for FloSlam a year up front for $150, which is all one payment, but it would divide out to $12.50 per month. And they've upped the month-to-month rate, which used to be $20. It's now $30. So
are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you. So we could speculate about what's going on there.
Oh, we could. Actually, that's an interesting point because we I actually said how FloSlam is doing and its success. Its price raise to $30 a month, which it's a little ridiculous for a wrestling streaming service when you're just doing Evolve weekends and stuff like that for a month-to-month basis. It's a little extreme when every other service is $10. And, like, the only service I could see charging a little bit extra is WWE. But they only charge $9.99, and they could charge $14 or $15 and it'd be fine. But $30? Really?
Well, they're apparently going to try. I'm guessing it's probably based on data they've seen in their, and how people are subscribing to Flow and how long they're keeping it. Someone said of the replies I got to the tweet and the screenshot that I put out a little while ago, I think maybe they had, maybe some good response, some good, subscriber rates around WrestleMania, and then people dropped off from there. So I don't know, maybe they're thinking that they're going to have more people coming in for these peak times like WrestleMania weekend and then dropping out or whatever. Or maybe they just think, maybe our growth potential isn't as good as we might have hoped it was. So let's see how much juice we can get out of all of these subscribers, or how much we can get out of this market.
I think it's likely a sign that they overestimated the popularity of the service at the beginning, and now it's probably a sign, such a huge price rise, that they're losing quite a bit of money. And I think they realise now that it's a niche service, and so for it to become a profitable entity, they need to increase the charge and hope that not too many people cancel.
And that's what's so risky about increasing the price. I mean, you want to increase the price in order to stay in business and in order to make sure everyone's getting paid on time. This isn't TNA, so there's not going to be delayed checks or checks not showing up. So outside of the infrastructure maintenance, you're taking into account how many people are actually going to stay, how many people are leaving, et cetera, et cetera. Overall, long term, because a lot of indie fans are cheap, and maybe I'm just speaking to myself or about myself because I'm really cheap, I see that $30 a month price tag being problematic, especially once you begin assessing the value of that. When you start taking a look at a 3-month period, you're talking about $90, so almost $100. What value have you received within those 3 months? Is it worth it to continue? And so it's not necessarily, when I take a look at subscription rates like that, I don't necessarily take a look at it month by month, but more so how people assess value 3 months, 6 months, 12 months in, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and this story really sort of is a head scratcher in the way of maybe they're directing people to the more Flow All Access thing, which includes all the Flow services for $150 a year, a flat rate, to more than just subscribing to one for $30 a month. And it's similar pricing throughout the Flow infrastructure. And I've heard of Flow before they got into the pro wrestling business, because they're in the amateur wrestling business, they're in the combat business, they're in the volleyball business, they're in the in niche sports businesses, and the pricing is pretty similar, like that $20 to $30 range, depending on the content you get, and maybe driving people towards that you can get all of this, even though you only want one of the niche for $150 a year, is better than charging. It's better for most people financially than dropping $30 a month, and then you'll be dropping $150 anyway for 6 months if you pay $30 a month for 6 months.
I think the issue that FloSlam has is that everyone compares value with the WWE network. And so for $9.99, you've got access to thousands of hours of the WWE archive. You get 2 shows, major shows a month, usually 1 or 2 pay-per-view level events. You have 205 Live, you have NXT, you have a variety of other shows.
Yeah.
And the problem is it then becomes very difficult for a niche company like FloSlam to charge $30 a month with a lot less star power than WWE. And I think this is a problem. I think if you asked people 5 years ago if you could get several major indie cards a month on a service online for $30 a month, people would think that would probably be a great deal. But today they probably won't do, because there's much cheaper services out there that have bigger star power, and the quality of the wrestling is comparable.
Right, and you compare the value. I pay $30 a month for 3 services: High Spots, New Japan, and WWE. So, in that, I get over 100, like maybe like 15. Why did I say 100,000? I don't think it's possible to have 100,000 hours of worth of content between anything, but those 3 services are so over the top that it makes FloSlam, who doesn't even have their full library up yet. Let's put that into consideration. And this was the 6-month point where they said, oh, we're going to have all the DG USA and Evolve shows up, where they have only like about maybe 10% of the Evolve show, 10% of the Evolve shows, and like maybe like 2 or 3 DG USA shows. And that is an issue when it comes to comparing value, because you look at the 3 services I listed and Powerbomb TV, and you look at some other services like Progress and Smash and what other, you can pay $60 a month and get every type of wrestling and live without Evolve. Sorry.
I was talking to Chris Zellner on Twitter the other night, and I was tweeting something about tape trading, and he said that he was spending something like, back in the tape trading days, something like $400 a month on tapes. So while that's probably to the extreme end of things, I think there are fans who are willing to spend money, and it's worth a try, especially if they feel like the market isn't as big as they thought it was going to be. Because I think the feeling that I've gotten from FloSlam is that they were kind of settled on Evolve being the centerpiece and WN being the centerpiece, and weren't really worried about getting other partners. Maybe because this market is only so big that if they got more partners, that wouldn't widen the market that much for them. But the feeling I've gotten is that at some point they were like, all right, this is, Evolve is what we're going to get, and we're not going to get anybody more high profile or even of similar profile in terms of other promotions on the network. And we're just going to try to hit the goals that we set. And I would take this, like as Keith said, kind of as a sign that maybe they're not going to get what they thought they were going to get.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment.
Well, one of the interesting things is that there's been some upheaval in the personnel at FloSlam. So it's very interesting that it was MMA writer Jeremy Bottas' sort of brainchild. It seemed to be his baby, the project. And then he left very shortly after the service was rolled out. And I don't know all the goings-on about that, but it just seems interesting that happened as well.
Yeah, and of course we had Rob McCarran who worked for them for I think it was a few days or